Continuando a nossa busca de soluções, a gente sabe que para ter inovação é preciso boas ideias, muito boa vontade, e para fazer a mágica acontecer é preciso, sim, dinheiro. E investir em financiamento verde também dá retorno financeiro. Quem ainda acha que a agenda verde é só uma ideologia, vai entender que é sobre economia. A jornalista Leila Sterenberg entrevista agora Tony Goldner, CEO da TNFD, no nosso Pocket Talk. Não há net zero sem natureza, desafios e oportunidades. Leila, Tony, welcome to our stage. Bem-vindos ao nosso palco. E Leila, querida, é com você.
Muito obrigada, Adelaide. É um prazer estar aqui. Tony, please, you are welcome. Let's sit here for our pocket. This is our set. Obrigada, gente. Bom dia. Ainda bom dia, já boa tarde, na verdade. Eu sou a Leila Sterenberg, então, jornalista. É um enorme prazer participar desse congresso do CEBDS, um ano chave para as discussões, negociações e tomadas de decisão que dizem respeito à sustentabilidade. E é uma honra receber o Tony Goldner, como anunciado, CEO da Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, ou simplesmente TNFD ou TNFD, né? A TNFD é uma iniciativa internacional que tem ganhado destaque por ajudar empresas e instituições financeiras a identificar, reportar e gerenciar riscos e oportunidades relacionados à natureza. É um marco fundamental no avanço das finanças sustentáveis. E, para contextualizar, assim como a TCFD, Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, vem guiando o mercado global na integração dos riscos climáticos às estratégias financeiras, a TNFD cumpre esse papel no que diz respeito à natureza, ou seja, enquanto a TCFD trata de clima, TNFD trata de biodiversidade, ecossistemas, recursos naturais. Criar métricas, padrões claros para incorporar o capital natural nas decisões financeiras é essencial na transição para uma economia mais resiliente. E o trabalho da TNFD é hoje referência nesse caminho. O CEBDS tem atuado ativamente na promoção do conhecimento e engajamento de múltiplos atores na temática de mensuração dos riscos, impactos e dependência dos negócios quanto à biodiversidade e ao reporte de natureza. Como parte da construção dessa jornada, em 2022, o CEBDS, né, Marina, se tornou coordenador do grupo de consulta da TNFD no Brasil, e eu vou conduzir essa entrevista em inglês. Welcome, Tony. So good to have you here. Thanks for being here with us.
My pleasure.
So, as the title of this pocket talk suggests, there is no net zero without nature. Why is that so, and what are the main challenges and opportunities?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Leila, for this opportunity. Thank you to Marina and the CEBDS team for all of their amazing support here in Brazil around the nature agenda and TNFD. I think the answer is fairly straightforward for nature-dependent economies like Brazil. Without nature, there is no flow of inputs into our business processes and into our economies. And we have to remember this key point. In business and finance, everyone's very focused on cash flows. Cash flows drive valuations. But cash flows depend on nature flows, the flow of nature's ecosystem services, as the scientists call it, into our business processes. So if we don't nurture nature's ability to continue to provide those services, businesses across the economy will be vulnerable. So we really have to change the conversation around nature from being one about compliance and about CSR to one now about resilience. It's ultimately about strategy and risk and resilience. And so my key message today and for everyone in Brazil is we have to think about nature now as a source of risk, as a source of resilience, and that requires a big shift in mindset. And so I'd encourage everyone to think about nature as a supply chain partner, to be thinking about nature as an innovation partner, and also to be thinking about nature as infrastructure. We should be investing in nature the way we invest in infrastructure.
The TNFD released its final recommendations in 2023, and hundreds of companies are already adopting the framework globally. How do you view the adoption in Brazil?
Well, we've got almost 600 adopters globally on a voluntary basis, and almost, I would say, close to 20 trillion in assets under management now. In Brazil, we have 16 out of almost 600. So I would like to see more progress. I think we are in the next few months to COP30, encouraging more Brazilian companies to adopt the TNFD on a voluntary basis. And I think there are a number of reasons why they should think about doing that. Number one is about resilience of your own business. If you understand your dependence on nature, you understand future risk to your business. And it's not just about being in compliance with government regulations. It's also about being positioned to answer questions and concerns increasingly coming from investors. So I think the other opportunity is, given Brazil's policy objective around bioeconomy, embracing the TNFD, understanding how nature is relevant to the business, positions Brazilian economies to be leader in the bioeconomy. And I think this is a global opportunity with COP30 this year to show Brazilian leadership globally around this important concept of bioeconomy, which is gaining interest and traction around the world.
With COP30 on the horizon, what can Brazil capitalize on its unique position as the world's largest holder of natural capital, and what commitments or announcements would you hope to see from Brazil's financial sector?
Well, I think in terms of the finance sector in particular, I think there are some exciting new ideas and proposals like the Tropical Forest Forever Fund, which is a central opportunity to capitalize and mobilize more finance. But at an institutional level, I think there is both a need and an opportunity for Brazilian companies and financial institutions to embed nature into their enterprise risk management processes. That sounds quite boring, but it's actually very essential activity. And I often encourage people to think about nature the way they think about cyber risk. Every company now understands that they are vulnerable to cyber and cyber resilience issues. And most boards have not thought at all about investing money in protecting the resilience of their business in the face of cyber attacks. But the same mindset can now be used in relation to nature. And so I think it's important we just think of nature the way we think about cyber, and it needs to be embedded into our standard business processes.
I bet many companies still view nature-related risk disclosure as an additional cost. How is TNFD helping shift this perception?
Well, as I said, I think it's fundamentally about the mindset of how we think about nature. Nature is not just the next CSR issue, it's not just the next compliance issue. It's fundamental to the resilience and the future of every business, from small businesses in supply chains all the way up to multinational corporations. So I think if we can shift the mindset, the way we think about nature, then we can change the behavior. If we change the behavior, we can shift the flow of finance. But it really starts with a mindset shift. And I think we've come a long way. 20, 30 years ago, we thought of nature as an externality, as something that was free, and that would continue to provide endless supplies of inputs into our business. But increasingly now we know that's not the case. Water-stressed areas might lead to stranded assets for companies, for example, in the beverage industry. If you have millions of dollars in a factory, in a plant extracting water, maybe that plant will become a stranded asset. So that's a problem for the company, it's a problem for the insurers, and it's a problem for the banks. We are seeing in semiconductor manufacturing huge global competition now around chip fabrication. Most of the world's chip fabrication plants are in water-stressed areas. And so governments and business are putting hundreds, tens of billions of dollars into capital expenditure, into race in the AI competition globally. But a lot of that investment's going into areas where water is already highly stressed, and these huge production facilities will make those matters worse. So we have to have the data, we have to have the analysis, but we have to be thinking not just about the impacts on nature, but also our dependencies on nature. And if we can change that mindset, we can shift the perception.
And what tangible benefits are early adopters already seeing?
Well, I think we're seeing from the early adoption of TNFD that companies are realizing that going through this process of understanding how nature is relevant to their business is changing their perception of risk, their perception of opportunity, and the strategy of the business. So I'll just give you two examples. One is one of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies was actually one of the very first TNFD adopters. They have done a full assessment of nature in relation to their business. And over the next 10 years, they are now spending $1 billion on climate and nature initiatives to underpin the revenue of their business, because they realize that their nature-related issues are actually bigger than their climate-related issues, right? So once you do the assessment, you'll be quite surprised at the scale of these issues. If you think climate is big for your business, there's a very significant chance that nature-related issues might present bigger risks to your business than climate-related issues. The second example is from an investor perspective. So as I said, many companies are thinking, well, I have to be prepared for government regulation. I would argue that you have to be actually more prepared now for questions from your investors, from the banks, from insurers, and from investors. One of the world's biggest investor is the Norwegian Sovereign Fund. A few months ago, they published their climate and nature report for 2024. And they have very clearly now stated that nature poses systemic risks to the global economy and to banking systems around the world. And last year in 2024, they engaged over 500 companies directly on nature-related issues. So for everyone working in a corporate team, a corporate sustainability team, you can increasingly expect investors to be coming asking questions about how you are managing nature-related issues. And it will lead to consequences around credit ratings, around access to capital, and around stewardship and potentially divestment by investors. So I don't want to scare people, but the point is, get moving now on a voluntary basis rather than wait for regulation, because it's in the best interest of the business to be doing so.
And we have time for one last question. What are the main emerging financial vehicles that are unlocking capital for conservation and restoration projects, and how can Brazilian companies access these resources and begin or accelerate their journey of integrating nature and finance?
Well, I think we heard on the last panel, there is a lot of opportunity to work with nature rather than insurance. And so there's tremendous opportunities for insurers to be more innovative, but also companies to work with their insurance providers to develop new solutions. A second interesting opportunity is what I would call a shift from one-dimensional solutions to three-dimensional solutions. So if, for example, we are planting trees, rapidly growing trees for carbon credits, in many cases that does nothing for nature or nothing for the local community. And I think a three-dimensional solution is one that factors in climate, nature, and social considerations. And those solutions should be charging a premium in the market because of the benefits they're deriving. They will inherently be more resilient for business buying the solution, but also for the local communities. So I think there's tremendous opportunity to be thinking about three-dimensional solutions rather than one-dimensional solutions. And finally, I think there is tremendous opportunity for countries like Brazil to be leading in this field, not waiting for innovation to come from New York or London. The innovation can come from here. And I think there's huge opportunity in thinking about nature as infrastructure and designing the financing solutions for long-term capital deployment into landscape scale restoration. And there's no reason why that can't start here in Brazil.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. It was great to have your insightful remarks in this conversation, and thank you for your leadership in aligning finance and nature. Muito obrigada a todos que nos acompanharam nessa conversa. A gente segue junto nas discussões que moldam um futuro mais sustentável, e eu vou voltar a estar com vocês depois do almoço. Obrigada.
Muito obrigada, Leila e Tony. Thank you.